Joker has been described in many ways. Controversial, shallow, masterful, haunting. It's got clowns in it. But above all else, Joker has been a deeply divisive film. I don't believe Joker has had such mixed reactions solely because people tend to disagree about comic book movies, although yeah, that's part of it. Rather, I think it's because the film itself invites disagreement due to its open-ended nature. You see, I didn't like Joker the first time I saw it. That isn't to say there's not a lot to love about the film, as everyone and their mother's guinea pig has pointed out. Joaquin Phoenix is brilliant, the score is hauntingly beautiful, and the visual storytelling is unlike anything you'd see in a typical superhero movie. But what turned me off to Joker upon my first viewing was the writing. While not all of the moment-to-moment dialogue was bad, I found much of the dialogue in the film to be incredibly heavy-handed. This is best exemplified by two sentences spoken at the film's climax. Our protagonist, the impoverished, mentally ill Arthur Fleck, has been invited to guest star on his favorite talk show due to an embarrassing clip of his stand-up comedy going viral. It is after Arthur confesses to killing multiple people on live television that he speaks the following. Do you know what you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash? You get what you deserve. And then he shoots the talk show host in the face. This moment is emblematic of the issues I have with Joker. It feels like that one line was the pitch for the film, and unfortunately, I don't think the film ever evolved beyond that base concept. There's no real subtext or subtlety to this moment. It's the movie bluntly stating its own thesis, and I don't think that thesis is all that interesting, deep, or complex. If the central message of Joker is that society is bad because it mistreats those who don't conform to it, or even that society creates monsters like Arthur, that's not a bad starting point, but that's all it is. A starting point. It feels like anything meaningful the movie has to say about society and mental illness is far too ham-fisted and half-baked to convey any real significance, and no moment or piece of dialogue better exemplifies that than the one I just mentioned. Except, that's just one way of looking at it. After seeing the film a second time, I actually believe that the heavy-handed nature of the dialogue is completely intentional. In fact, I don't think the climactic scene of Joker, in which Arthur guest stars on The Murray Griffin Show, ever really happened. Do I sound crazy? Pretentious? Well, hear me out. Fairly early on in the movie, Arthur is assaulted by a group of men on the subway, and he pulls a gun on them and shoots and kills all three of them. Because these men were well-to-do Wall Street folks, Gotham's upper class interprets this event as a targeted assault, that it's now dangerous to be wealthy because the lower-class scum are coming to murder you simply because they're jealous of your success. Gotham's lower class, however, or at least a significant portion of its lower class, see this act as heroic, as a way of rising against their perceived oppressors. Since Arthur was wearing clown makeup at the time of the shooting, and he wasn't personally identified by anybody at the scene, Gotham's lower class takes to the streets in protests wearing clown masks, idealizing Arthur almost as some sort of folk hero. Very little nuance is awarded to either the rich or the poor here. There's a brief news segment during the movie in which these clown protesters are asked what they want and why they are protesting. A man in clown makeup responds by literally saying, and pardon my English, fudge the rich. He doesn't argue that their wealth should be redistributed in order to better aid those in need, or that it's unfair that so few people hold so much of the power, but simply, fudge the rich. And that's all the depth these protesters are ever given. Similarly, Gotham's upper class is explored through Thomas Wayne, who proves himself to be an uncaring billionaire who's only looking out for himself. The Gotham City we are shown isn't a complex or interesting world. It's black and white, a system that unequivocally favors the rich and spits on the poor. However, it's also a world where everybody is a total jerk. There's not a single person in the movie, rich or poor, who has Arthur's best interests at heart. While this may be an approximation of the objective Gotham City, the Gotham we are shown is solely Arthur's Gotham. It is how Arthur sees the world, and Arthur, a struggling, mentally ill man who feels utterly beaten down and ignored by everybody around him, sees the world in black and white. Every scene in this film, in fact, is filtered through Arthur's lens, and takes place entirely from his point of view. We are shown multiple times that Arthur is an unreliable narrator, that the reality we are shown through him is objectively false. When Arthur begins a romantic relationship with his neighbor Sophie, we learn later on that this was entirely a delusion, a way of validating himself. On the date the two go on, which we later learn Sophie was entirely absent from, Sophie comments that as far as she's concerned, the guy who shot those men on the subway is a hero. At that very moment, a taxi drives by with a man wearing a clown mask in the back seat, and the man's gaze seems to be fixated directly on Arthur. Arthur's delusions award him with the attention and validation that the real world denies him. Think about one of the earlier scenes in Joker, when Arthur imagines being in the audience of the Murray Griffin show. In that sequence, Murray Griffin tells Arthur that he would be proud to have a son like him, and soon after that, we cut to Arthur staring somberly at the cold light of his television. All of that was in his head, and all of it can be viewed as a form of escapism and wish fulfillment. The climactic sequence of Joker, from when Arthur dresses in his full Joker regalia until he is lifted up by his clown-faced admirers during the riot, can be interpreted entirely as wish fulfillment. Think about how well everything goes for Arthur after he leaves to guest star on the Murray Griffin show. The stairs he climbed up laboriously before his transformation into Joker are now a playground for him, something to dance triumphantly on with a carefree ease. Arthur manages to outsmart two detectives attempting to take him in. He even gets hit by a car and is knocked onto the filthy street, but his stylish suit remains untarnished. And then there's the talk show itself. Compared to Arthur's more drab, blue-lit apartment, the Murray Griffin show is bright, larger than life, and bursting with warm, vibrant colors. When he first sits down next to Murray as his segment begins, Arthur even remarks, "This is exactly how I imagined it." Furthermore, Arthur gets to say everything he's ever wanted to say to the world. He airs all his grievances with how he has been overlooked and trodden upon, exclaiming, "If it was me dying on the sidewalk, you'd walk right over me." Think back to his final discussion with his social worker.
For my whole life, I didn't know if I even really existed.
But now, Arthur gets to prove that he exists. He gets to prove that people like him, who are pummeled and ostracized by society for being different, will not just sit down and take it. When Arthur does unleash that final piece of dialogue, when he murders a talk show host on live television, nobody even tries to stop him. They just watch. For the first time in his life, Arthur is the center of attention. His fortune only arises further when the protesters break him out of the police car hauling him to prison. This is the ideal scenario for Arthur. He wins at the end of this film. As the protesters taking to the streets explode into a full-blown riot, we witness a man in a clown mask follow Thomas, Martha, and Bruce Wayne out of a theater, where he guns Thomas and Martha down. Not before, however, he states, "Hey Wayne, you get what you deserve," which directly echoes Arthur's words to Murray Griffin right before he shot him. In this way, we see how Arthur is no longer ignored, but in fact looked up to and mimicked as a heroic figure. The film fades to black after Arthur stands triumphantly above his sea of adoring fans, and the film returns with Arthur laughing hysterically, presumably as a resident in Arkham State Hospital. He appears to be talking to a social worker, and when she asks what's so funny, Arthur says to her, "It's a joke, but you wouldn't get it." This implies that, at the very least, some of this was all in Arthur's head. I would argue that everything after Arthur's departure for the Murray Griffin show is all in his head, but that's just my interpretation of the film. You might have a different interpretation, and that's not inherently more or less valid than mine. Taken at face value, Joker is a frustratingly shallow look at societal conformity and class tensions. The first time I saw Joker, that's how I saw it, as a movie trying to say something revelatory and grandiose about human nature that fell flat on its face. But the second time around, I saw the movie as something else, as one thing and one thing only: Arthur's story. In my opinion, Joker isn't a movie about why society is ugly or why society is so black and white. It's a movie about what drives a person to see society in that way, and I'd argue that it greatly succeeds on that account. When the protagonist is an unreliable narrator, when the film itself muddles the line of objective reality, it's only natural that different interpretations of the film will arise. Joker isn't divisive solely because it's open to interpretation, but because those interpretations fundamentally alter the perceived quality and effect of the film. I don't like the version of Joker that says, "Society bad," without expanding on that idea further, but I do like the version of Joker that shows you how a character comes to believe that, and how that belief radicalizes him. And you know what? Maybe you feel the opposite. Maybe you thought Joker's examination of class tensions has far more depth than I gave it credit for. Maybe you thought this character study didn't work as well as I think it does, and that's perfectly fine. I can understand if you feel that way, and I can see the merit of looking at the film in a different light than I have. In the ever-turbulent field of internet film discussion, it's important to keep an open mind. That doesn't mean that you should expect or even want someone to change your opinion about a movie, but I think it's very harmful and even toxic to shut out that idea entirely, to assume that anybody with a different opinion than yours is just wrong. Maybe they are wrong, or maybe you strongly disagree with them, but that doesn't mean their argument is valueless to you. We have the most to learn from the people that we disagree with, and I might not have given Joker another chance if one of my friends hadn't so adamantly enjoyed the movie and argued for its case. And I ended up really liking Joker and having a lot of appreciation for it. So, yeah, I think that's pretty darn cool. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed my take on Joker. If you did, likes and shares are truly appreciated, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the movie down in the comments, as it's kind of an interesting movie to discuss. I have a bunch of great videos to share with you guys over the next few months, from some stuff I've mentioned before like Superman, and maybe some new stuff, that maybe you wouldn't expect. So follow me on Twitter at critical_rants, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any upcoming content. I'll see you guys soon. So I just have some Joker material I want to read from my ledger here. So full disclosure, most of these jokes aren't worth a nickel. Son. Nicholson. Oh, what? You're not gonna let me get away with that one? Look, I'm just having some fun here. I know I'm really hamming it up, or should I say hammeling it up? Okay. Even I'll admit, that one was pretty half-bakered. But we're talking about Joker here. And you know what they say? When in Rome, Arrow. Caesar Romero. All right, fine. You really didn't like my Joker material. That's fine. I have some other stuff prepared for tonight. Harry Potter. My favorite character from Harry Potter is Fawkes, the Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix, you utter fools!